Digital audio health by Simatrax.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now, and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show. Sometimes the universe has a way of placing people or obstacles in your path to help guide and direct you on your mission. Listen in as we discover the path my guest has traveled. Has she been inspired by a calling, crafted her journey, or a bit of both? I invite you to embrace the conversations and to use them to help you to recognize if this is happening in your life. Our guest today is Julianna Bootsman, who is Chief Spiritual Officer, Conscious Leadership Coach, Speaker, and Author. Though she flourished through 4 successful careers, Julianna only ever had one vocation: to love. Love is what resurrected her from years of secretive bulimia and a traumatic divorce. It's what fuels her fire for motherhood and lights the way of her company, White Box Leadership. Julianna is a Chief Spiritual Officer and Conscious Leadership Coach that works with companies and leaders from around the world. She builds and facilitates conscious leadership training programs that guide companies and leaders to live and operate from the foundation of love, with both heart and head working together to create outcomes where everyone thrives. As Chief Spiritual Officer, Julianna is a leader in human growth and culture change, connecting the spirit of who you are to the spirit of what you do. Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show, Julianna.
Hello, it's so nice to be here.
It's such a pleasure. What helped you decide to develop your spirit in business model?
For me, it goes back to actually when I was quite young. I grew up as dance being my number one plan A. There was nothing else I was going to do. This is what I was going to do as my profession.
Mm-hmm.
So I pursued that as a young person, and really just put everything into that. And so when I was about 16, I have what I call my sort of first real spiritual experience,
Mm-hmm.
where I was at this huge dance convention. Normally there's like anywhere between 300 and 500 people in the room.
Wow.
And I'm there, and I'm by far not the best dancer in the room at all, but I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
It was my passion. It was where my purpose, it was the thing I was going to do in my life. And I was standing there in this room, and the teacher at that time that was teaching that particular class, I like to describe him as like the Richard Simmons of dance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he looked like. That's what his energy was. He was just this remarkable man. And he created this piece of choreography for us to dance to. And it was my turn to go and dance. And they split us off into like 50 people at a time to stand on the ballroom. And I laid my hands by my side at the beginning of this number, and the music starts to play, and I just hear and feel myself go, just let it all go.
Mm-hmm.
Surrender yourself completely into this moment, into this experience, and just let it all go. So I let go of any ideas that I'm lacking in anything, that I am not the best, and just really surrendered to it. And I started to move to that music in a way that I've never felt myself before. And at some point through it, I had tears going down my eyes, and I'm moving almost like I'm having almost like an out of body experience. Like, what is happening? Like, I've never felt this before. And the music stops. I look over at my teacher who's standing on the edge watching, and she's got tears streaming down her face. And she says to me, Julianna, I've never seen you move like that. Said, I've never felt myself move like that. And in that moment, there was a knowingness that came over me that our ability to reach our fullest potential, to reach expressions and our abilities that are at our highest at any given point in time doesn't come from needing to train more, push more. There's an unlocking that happens when we completely release and surrender into this spirit inside of us, into this peace within us, and we just give ourselves fully to a moment, and just let go of all of the rest of the stuff. And then I would work from there. I started to really take that, what I like to call it, like technology. There was a technology that was unlocked in me that is this technology of the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That then I took and I started to use with dancers when I started to train them. So I did pursue a dance. I did pursue a dance career. And, but in that, like my expanded story, which I don't know if we need to get into today, but I have it written
Yes. Mm-hmm.
in a chapter of a book that just got published and put out, called Our Yellow Brick Road. And in there, I have a chapter called The Language of the Soul. And I share my full story in there about this. But I went and I really pursued this profession. I was in New York, but then I started to meet all of those, what I call foreign languages of the world, like greed and fear and doubt and insecurity and all of these things. And it became hard to sustain this path of the soul, this path of the spirit, this freedom to really let go. And so through all of that, though, I kept teaching dance, and I was working with dancers at the time as well, to be able to activate these parts in them, to be able to support them to see how they could become exponentially better in a very short amount of time, how their ability to creatively open up. And we would see our dancers experience shifts in the course of a single class or over the course of a week when we were doing intensives with them and things like that. And so in that environment, that gave me the knowing that there is something within us that we can then access, that puts us in that place with our wisdom, intuition, creativity, this pure potentiality. And so since then, Deepak Chopra has a book out called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success.
Mm-hmm.
First law is the law of pure potentiality. Mm-hmm. And it talks about how the full expansiveness that lives in all of nature, the ability for everything that just happens naturally, for that, we talk, you hear people talking about the acorn, that seed that looks like nothing, but in it carries everything that it needs to be able to grow into this massive tree. And that lives in us and unlocks in us, always. And so I pursued the dance career, and then I ended up teaching dance. And as I continued to go along my path, I ended up leaving dance behind as what became my career. And I went into PR and marketing. And there I was working with people to be able to identify who they really are, what is in their essence of who they are, and how do we bring that into the expression so that the audience and the people who are supposed to work with them can find them, because they're now authentically expressing themselves at their essence, at who they really are, what they're really here to do. But with that, it started to become out of alignment, because we were getting them to that point where we could find the outwardly expression of it, but the inner work hadn't been done within all parts of the organization to actually really be living that in all ways. And so that's what took me into the coaching work. And at this stage now, the work that I do is being able to go in with organizations and say, when we can connect on the level of who you are at your essence, at your spirit, we then activate the highest level of potential within you to be able to perform at your best, and to be able to even find out what that is, and to find out what are the areas that you even want to be expressing in or performing in or working in, and how we then connect with the world around us in a way that's true to us, and perfectly in flow. So it's a bit of a long answer there, but
well, yeah. And so
one place, and then that was the thread that drew all the way through all parts of my life.
So what you were doing is helping people tap into their own genius.
Yeah, really.
Your genius lives at the soul level. How were you able to coax that from people that you were working with? How did you have them tap into the true essence of who they were in order to work from that level?
There is a willingness in them to want to find that out. So first, like if someone's not interested in knowing or finding out, then that's, not possible.
Yeah.
Or it takes time, or, there's just patience in that. So not pushing at it, but really it's continuing to connect into, I often say it's like a game of hot or cold.
Okay.
And so, in that childhood game where something's hidden, and then you help somebody find it. And so the thing is hidden somewhere within them. And then we go on a journey of going, what feels hot? Where is it starting to feel like warm? What's feeling cold? Sometimes people like describe as feeling what feels constricted and what feels expansive. And we begin to identify what in their life, what in the way that they're showing up in their behavior or expression feels expansive, feels like it's warm, feels like I just want more of that. And what's feeling constricted, what feels a bit cold. And we just come into awareness of it. So there's a model that I use called KOA, which is KOA. And the K stands for knowing. So often clients, or all of us, have a lot of things that we know. We actually know we like to do that thing. We actually know this is the place where we feel most at peace or at home. We actually know that these are the people that we just love to spend time with. We actually know that these are the tools and the skills and the thought processes that are going to help me, achieve that which I'm desiring. Simple examples like, I know that if I want to be able to be healthier physically, that I should probably that I should eliminate these few things, that I should start walking consistently every day, even if it's for 10 minutes. It doesn't mean that I'm actually doing it, but we'll keep reading all the books. We'll listen to all the podcasts. We'll take all this stuff in, but we're still not seeing change. And so that's where it goes to the owning, which is the O. And I see like a KOA model, the O is becomes like a portal. It becomes like a slipstream where we go into the owning piece. And that's where the hot or cold game comes in, where we really start to own, what, this over here does feel cold. It does feel constrictive. And sometimes that's really hard because it requires a change. It might require a letting go. It might require a bit of an identity shift. We've been identifying ourselves by this thing that's actually kind of cold and constrictive. And this over here feels warm. I know I love it, but I haven't been living into it for a while. So if I start moving into there, what's going to happen? So the more that we really spend time in this owning phase and come to a place where our awareness around that is clear, and we begin to know and connect our identity to that part that is warm, that moves in that direction. And there's a bit of for me, when I've used this model has guided me in my life. When I can really own what's happening and I can see that truth is this direction, love for me, my truth is this, and I lean into that. It's the same thing that happened when I was 16 in that dance. The action just occurs. I didn't actually try and dance like that. I didn't make that happen. I owned what I was no longer wanting to be or try so hard to perform in a certain way. I let go of those things, and then the action just happened. And so and that's what is so beautiful, is that it almost just becomes, sometimes it's like, these are the moments where I've oh my gosh, I look back, I'm like, look at what happened. And it did, the action part actually didn't even feel that hard anymore or at all. But what happens is when the action feels really hard, we've skipped the owning. We just go from K to A. We just go from knowing to acting, and then we're pushing. And it's this hustling, and it feels like a grind, and it feels really hard. The owning phase, I'm not saying it's going to feel easy.
No.
But that's the phase where we let ourselves, it's what we might even say, it's the pregnancy phase. It's the part where you let yourself be in that phase. And then when it comes into action, it just flows. It just begins to happen. Things just begin to present themselves. And so, yeah. So that's sort of, you asked me, how do we really
right? How do you do it? And so, a lot of people will say, just get out of your own way. Well, I mean, that's it ends up being a cliche, because what Where am I in my own way? I mean, unless you have a conscious awareness of what you're struggling against, and that's not the right thing to do, you can't get out of your own way until you're taught a different way, is just to put yourself in the background and let things unfold, right? And is how would you explain it?
I think that, like what you just said, you don't always know where you're in your own way.
No, you don't.
Yeah. And so my response to that is, where you do know, if there have been things that have been coming up rough already, and there is something that you do know, I know I'm in my own way because I keep saying that I'm going to get up at 7 a.m. and I keep hitting snooze for 20 more minutes. And then I get up and I rush and I can feel my whole day is put off.
Yeah.
So that's a knowingness. And I actually do know I'm in my own way. The challenge is, how do I need to own what's really happening there so that the action can just change? The parts where we don't know where we're in our own way sometimes is where there is like just a repeat pattern that we're so blind to, or a way that we're responding to things. There was an experience that happened I was away on a retreat this past weekend, and my partner and I were having a conversation with somebody. And when the two of us get into conversations with somebody, we're just really both all there with them. And we had another friend walk by and we said, "Oh, come in, we want you to meet this other friend of ours." And he got pulled into our conversation. One of the things he said to us is, he said, when the two of you are talking to somebody, it's like you really make them feel so like they're the only one that exists, like they so cared for. And he says, "I just don't know if I am you guys." So when we pulled him into the conversation, we were so not mindful or even aware that he didn't want to be there anymore. And now he was struggling in this tension of like, how do I get out of this?
How do I get out of this now?
And both of us had this awareness of, in the process of trying to bring people together or to do this, we actually created something that wasn't that comfortable for him. So in a sense, we were sort of in our own way of being able to really create connection and unity. We were doing the opposite. We were keeping him somewhere where he didn't want to be because we weren't mindful of just, we assumed that he would want to join the conversation when he didn't, and then he didn't know how to exit without being rude. So he shared with us that, and we thought, oh, it's so like you've really brought that to our attention. We'll be so mindful of that next time, to be able to say, introduce, like, go on and leave, or pay attention to what's really around us, and to be able to support people in that. So, I mean, that's such a small little example of just things that we aren't aware of. And so very open to receiving feedback, being to request it. There's a model that I use called the Johari window. And in it, it talks about the things that we know, the things that are in our blind spot, the things that we are consciously hiding, and the things that are totally out of our awareness. So the way that we grow that box is by, the first box is everything that other people know about us and we also know about ourselves. And so that's everything that's open. But to reveal our blind spots, we have to consciously be willing to ask people, what are you seeing that I'm not? So one of the most powerful questions that I often ask to support with growth forward is one, and this was something that I heard one of the poets and that I love is David White. And he shared this in a session that he was leading. And he said, to ask yourself the question, what is the question that I'm most afraid to ask, but is probably the exact one that I need to be asking myself?
Oh boy.
What is the question I'm most afraid to ask, but is probably the exact one I need to ask myself? And that alone, when you sit with that, is going to reveal something in you that is hiding. You don't know, but there's enough knowing that there are some questions. But if I start exploring down that road, it's going to create change. I don't know what I'm going to find. So that, and then the other one is to then go and ask somebody else, what are you seeing in me that I am not doing, or that I could be doing, that if I did do it, it could really move me forward in a direction that is true for me? So you ask a trusted friend, spiritual director, somebody in your life, these questions and be willing to receive it. So that's the blind spot. And then the hidden stuff, the first question I ask kind of reveals some of the hidden stuff, but the hidden stuff is going, what am I concealing? What is it that I feel like I just can't share with people? Because if they found this out about me, I would no longer be loved or cared for. They would see me in a different light. It would make me, all of the things. So being able to begin to reveal what is hidden and request to receive what I can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do that, it opens up this unknown quadrant in our lives that really reveals this magic. And so, so that's one of the different ways that might show up in our lives.
Right. You have an extraordinary gift, though. I remember when you and I met and we began talking. I mean, we were, our energies coalesced, and really we were blind to what was going on around us. And I think that's a gift when you meet somebody, because there's a connection there that really can't be forced or pushed. It's just something that happens or doesn't happen. And I can imagine the energy that you had with those people. The latecomer had a hard time getting up to the level that you were at, right? And that was the uncomfortableness, because when you're in spirit and you're having a conversation with somebody, I just find that it is hard to bring people in and have them be at the same level that you're in, because already you've developed the rhythm of the conversation, right? You said something really interesting, and that is the question that you need to ask yourself. And sometimes we don't have the courage to ask ourselves those questions, or we don't know the question that we need to ask. And what kind of exercise would you suggest that people journal to find out more about themselves? Like, what exercise would you have people do if they just were like, I'm blocked, I don't know what I should ask myself? Because it's just the level of consciousness, and that's what we talk about in my show, is your level of consciousness. So did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways that you can kind of go about that. One of the things that I offer first is sometimes we're so, when something like that's offered, so even anybody that might be listening to right now, when they heard that question asked, they might have felt something. And I think even when I said you felt something.
I felt something. Yes, I did.
And then what we often want to do is immediately jump to want to try and find the answer. So my invitation would be to actually just sit in stillness and in quiet with that question for as long as you need. It's a practice that we call Lectio Divino, where it's like the contemplative way, where we let it really just almost like let it wash over you. Let it embed into you, let it sink into you like water soaking into a sponge, like water seeping into the earth and nurturing the roots. And that you don't have to actually get the answer right away, but your willingness to stay with the question. What I love about the word question is when you break it down, it actually is quest I on.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, explain that to the audience then.
So it's the quest I on. And so when you sit with that question, okay, I felt something. Did I feel something? I felt something physically in my body. So there's something there. That's a warm lead. Maybe it even felt, this is the piece with constriction, is sometimes courage, to have to push through courage. It feels, but there's a difference, when it's really like constrictive, this is a no. And where this is like, this feels a bit painful, but it's a yes, move in that direction.
Yes.
And so just sit with the question. And so I might, so then one of the things that I do with it then is the act of journaling, but journaling from a place that is just free writing. You're not trying to find the answer. You're putting your pen to the paper and allowing, there's lots of different ways. Like Jordan Peterson calls it writing with the pen of light. Others call it just free writing, conscious stream of writing. And so sometimes I'll write that question at the top, and then I'll open it up to God or to whatever thing is bigger than me, and say, and just be open. I am open to listening. I am open to hearing. I'm open to whatever's being revealed. And then I just start writing. And I joke with my clients sometimes, being like, the very first thing that comes to your mind is, Julianna told me this question and I have no idea what the answer is. And she just keeps telling me to keep writing. So I'm just going to keep writing, and maybe something's going to come. And, this is feeling a bit frustrating in me and I'm getting lost. And, but if there was an answer to this question, what could it be? What could the many possible answers be? Let me just start here. What am I starting to get? And I'll just write whatever comes out. Sometimes you might even just start writing about a frustration from the day before, or something that you just saw, and then eventually what comes out. And so this is the morning pages tool is something that comes from Julia Cameron. She wrote The Artist's Way.
The Artist's Way.
And what she offers, and there really is something in it, that is to write 3 full pages. So it takes, sometimes, depending on the size of your page, 20 to 30 minutes.
and how big you write to get through the 3 pages. Yeah. It can be, it's cathartic. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, there's something that happens when I get to the 3rd page. That's often, there's something that clicks out and something that comes up, and I'm like,
there it is.
There's the beginning of it, or might this be it? Usually the way that it shows up when a client or somebody I'm talking to offers the question is they discount it right away. And then I pull it back into the frame, because it'll have sometimes it almost has a giggle behind it, or like, I thought about this, and then it just like whispers away like it was falling on the wind. And we go, no, let's bring that one back. What was that right there? Because it's like, I'm going to say it really fast, but maybe nobody will hear it.
Yes.
I'm going to keep going. And if I just does that count? And I'll be like, okay, let's pull this one back into the frame. And so paying attention to just those rhythms within yourself of what's coming out, what does that feel like? So I think that form of journaling can really be helpful to begin to identify that, what is the question that I'm most afraid to ask? And sitting with it and see what begins to come out. And it might even take you, depending on where you are, you might be like, well, you might start with like, well, what is fear anyway? What does that mean to me? Like, you can go anywhere you want with it. I want to just bring it back to your soul, your spirit will know where to take you on this. And
so, that's what you
trust. I am sitting here and my soul and my spirit are holding this pen, and we're just going to dance a little bit. We're going to see what begins to come out. No expectations, but just staying with it, continue to nurture it, continue to come to it. I think there's a relationship. For me, it was I remember when I was going through some of these big changes in my life, that I'm coming back into a relationship with my soul and my spirit so that it can trust me again. It knows that I am on the team, because it's there all of the time, but I'm not always listening and following. And so how do we build trust? We show up consistently again and again. How does anything begin to work? So if you want to see results in your physical fitness, you show up to it every day to see those results. So if we want to begin to, we just keep showing up to the page. We just keep showing up to the question. We keep showing up, and then we begin to have more revealed to us. And I think being open to it showing up in so many different ways. Sometimes we get we decided we want it to just look like this, or we have an expectation it's going to feel like this, but we're really open to all of the different ways that it might show up. So, and then the last thing I'll say on that is that what's occurring here is an interrupt and a breaking of patterns. And so sometimes an easy ways, or not easy, but a way that can begin to support you to open up your realm of potentiality and possibilities is by starting to pay attention to, what am I habitually doing every day? And how can I just change up the pattern? Something as simple as, I'm just going to take a different road to work in the morning. I always leave my house and turn right to take a walk. I'm going to leave my house and turn left. I'm going to drive down the street, and all of a sudden I feel like I want to stop at that park. And instead of just thinking it, I'm actually going to stop at the park and sit at that bench for a moment. I always hold my glass in the right hand. I'm going to hold it in the left hand. Anything that can be a small pattern change or pattern interrupt can start to kind of give us that sense of that there gets of exploring what it feels like to have to feel something new or to feel a change. And it can just interrupt the patterns within us.
Mm-hmm.
But we get these little moments that come to us, like turn right, not left.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
yeah. And sometimes you save yourself from a car accident.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah. And so what that helps as well is it helps you to be present. And when you're present, then you can feel more of who you are. Yeah. And when I journal, and this is a great thing to think about too, is I come from the place where I'm courting my soul. Because I'm here on it's my soul's journey. This body is going to leave, and my soul is going to continue on wherever it's going to continue on. So I spend time in courting my soul every morning, even if I have 2 pages of things that I have to do today. I do better when I have my soul with me. Yeah. And I'm grounded, and it helps me be more present, more productive, and all those things. Yeah. You're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show right now, whose podcast is being treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Simatrax. And today I am speaking with Julianna Bootsman. Please let the listeners know where they may contact you, reach out to you.
They can find me on, my company is called White Box Leadership. So they can go to whiteboxleadership.com. They can find me on LinkedIn or YouTube under Julianna Bootsman. And so reach out to me in any of those places.
Wonderful. Thank you. You know, when I was T-boned and I left my body, or my soul took a hike, I'm out of here. I began writing about things that I always wanted to write a book. And I just felt called to write this book. And the thoughts of people reading that book or knowing more about me terrified me, because I'm a very private person. And here I'm writing this book that shows all. And so it's hidden from view. That real, true essence of who you are is hidden because people don't know that part of you. And my special ability sometimes would scare a person because they would think that I would be able to read their mind or something like that, which I cannot do. I don't have that ability to do that. But when you share with the world the true essence of who you are, it can be really scary. And I scare easy, right? But I found that when it came close to producing the book and marketing it, that the fright just disappeared. And boy, it just doors opened for me as soon as I published that book. It was incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I encourage listeners to, we don't know where our journeys will lead us, but we need to take that first step. And journaling is true. Well, Dr. Joel Bryant, who I've interviewed a couple of times on my podcast, says journaling is magic. And I really see that.
What I hear and what you shared there, and this goes in line with this COA model that I teach and share, is that we can't, like, not to place story on what the experience of the action is actually going to be.
Yeah.
Because the story that you would have placed on it is I scare easily. I'm going to be afraid. It's going to be hard. But by the time you'd actually gone through the whole owning phase, you didn't just know you wanted to write a book. You just didn't know you wanted to do this stuff and eventually experience that action. You went through the full owning phase. And by the time you spent the time there and you got to action, it actually wasn't scary. No. None of that fear wasn't there. That experience that you would have thought, or the story you would have placed on it, wasn't there. But it might have been if the process that you went through was different and you just tried to push that action. And you might have felt all of those triggers and all of those things. Who knows? We don't know that. But what you shared there is that the action really wasn't what you might have thought it would be. And so I would even be curious with that, like, in some instances you must scare easily, but you actually aren't someone that always scares easily, because that wasn't your truth.
No. Yeah, that's right. So it was very cathartic. And my life has been enriched so much since I've done it. And the closer I got to publishing, the less the fear was. Because fear, we can stack fear. We can just stack fear upon fear upon fear, and then you do nothing. Right. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I certainly knew how to keep on moving forward with a project. And that's exactly. And don't you find that even your chapters in writing a book, that it takes on its own personality?
Yeah.
And you just end up being the caretaker of it, and making sure that it gets to where it needs to get to.
Yeah.
Tell me, what extraordinary experience have you had in your life?
We were kind of alluding to this, I think, earlier. And when I sat on it was that part where I talk about in the Johari window, the pieces that we keep hidden, was the things that I thought that I could, that I had to most keep hidden, that when I actually revealed them, I was met with more unconditional love than ever before in my life.
Oh, what a teaching. Oh, thank you so much.
And it was all sorts of things. So one of the things that it took me, I suffered from bulimia for 8 years. And this is in the chapter that I wrote there, but it started at the beginning of when I'd said yes to marry what is now my former husband, all the way to when my son was born, was when I found out I was pregnant with my son. And the bulimia stopped. I have a video, the talk that I did called Mirror of the Soul, that tells just a shortened version of this story, that speaks about that moment, my bathroom floor moment, where I found out I was pregnant with my son, and I threw up one last time. And I looked at the mirror and I said, this is not who I am. I will not be 9 months pregnant and throwing up in the bathroom, not from nausea, but from self-induced suffering. And so I looked in the mirror and I saw who I am, and I knew who I was, and it stopped in that moment. Wow. But then I carried so much shame over the fact that I had dealt severe, like I was binging and purging every day, and it was a secret. I told nobody about it. One of my best friends knew I was struggling a bit with it, but I didn't say the severity or how disgusting it was. And like the things that I did. And anybody that's going through this on a severe level, like, I see you. And it's like, I mean, I would steal food from the grocery store so that it wouldn't show up on the grocery bill. And I would just like hide those extra things so that the amount that I was eating wasn't showing up on the grocery bill.
Oh, okay.
And so like out of integrity, out of alignment, and keeping it secret. And to this day, when I tell people the story sometimes and they see me, they're like, I honestly, Julianna, I hear you and I believe you, but I can't even imagine that was you. And I said, I know. Dan, do you know how many other people are living that kind of a story? Where what you see on the outside, there's no way that you could piece together that they could have this that they live with, or that they could operate and behave in some of those ways. And so I know it because I lived it. And then because it also went away, what I want to say, almost like in a moment. And then it's never come back. There's been moments where I've felt like a twinge of, oh, this is where the binging would have happened. Okay. And it doesn't now. But I felt like I didn't know how to help anybody through it because I got over it so easily. And so that shame and carrying it. And then when I finally was in a place where I could connected what had actually happened, that what was a large part of what happened in that moment was the relationship with me having my first son was me being able to bring out the pure essence of who this child is. And that was essentially my coach role. Like, me coming into my divine mother was what helped me, was a larger part of what really happened in the moment on that bathroom floor. But sharing it out loud for the first time, and then as I've continued to share that story, being met with unconditional love. And there's been other things in my life that, that we would feel like, if I told anybody this is something I've thought or felt or done, I'll be shamed, I'll be executed from the island, like whatever it is. And anytime I have brought forward those things that I felt like I had to keep hidden, I was met with love, and usually a story of, that's happening to me too. I have that happening in my life, or whatever it is. And it creates this connection. So it's like, the love and the care for the fullness of who we are in our humanity, dark, light, all the shadows, all of it is like, there's so much imperfection in our world, and we're loved because of it. And I've experienced that in my life. And it's what I often say to people, like, I'm the person that, like, if you called me to saying, like, I need you to help me move this dead body because I just killed someone, I would come and help you through that situation. I wouldn't judge you through it. And we would work through like what we need to do as a result without keeping it, but we would move through that. And, and I've had that happen where friends have called me up and come over, and they've gone through something so big that they can't share anywhere else yet, but they know that in space they will be met with unconditional love and be held in it fully. And so that's the biggest awareness, I think, the most extraordinary thing that I've experienced, and that I just really want to continue to offer to people, that they don't have to keep anything hidden. Yeah.
Do you feel that you've been called to your journey?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, my one vocation is love. So my calling is to know, I could probably say it in a couple of ways, but it's to really support people to discover and to live into the full expression of who they are in the eye of God. And so with that, it's the essence of it for me is to know love in all ways, and to really support us to understand this language of love, this language of that's expressed in more than words. It's expressed in the essence of our being. It's the thing that creates connection, healing, growth. Like, it brings forward all life in our world. And so for me, I keep being called to bring that into the place of business, because that is the place where we gather to exert energy and to serve in this world more than anywhere else. And so if we're really going to create change and transformation and bring our world and to understand what it means in our life to live into that true expression of who we are, and to bring ourselves into knowing what the act of love looks like, the place where we're going to learn that, we're going to exercise it, we're going to experience it, we're going to bring it to reality, will be in business. And if we can do that there, it will create such change in our world, which is scary too. And we're going to be in it, and we can do it.
We absolutely can do it. For our listeners, sometimes we're having hard days, we're raising our children. And if you just take a moment and feel the love that's in your heart and speak from there, you'll find, first of all, it calms you, and it'll bring a kindness. A kindness will exude from your soul, and speak from that part.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Julianna. What a jam-packed podcast this has been. You are a brilliant woman. You have a lot of courage to go from the relationship that wasn't working out. On the spiritual level, it wasn't working out for you when you're harming your body the way you were, and going to a place that you're loved. You have a partner now that you are on that journey together, the spiritual journey together. So thank you so much for being on the show. You've taught our listeners an enormous amount. Every time I speak with you, I learn so much from you. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, for having me. Truly, I feel the same way right back to you. And I'm really grateful for how you show up in the world.
Thank you. Theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show, Sun on the Water, is composed and performed by my friend John Park Wheeler. This is Rhonda Grant with the Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.
Digital audio health by Cymatrax.